All right. Just one point of curiosity. There was a motion for revision earlier filed that's pending. Is it the party's position that this trial will resolve that and make that moot?
In my opinion, it will. This is for a full minor guardianship. So at that point, the emergency would come to a close in any event.
Okay, Mr. Radagnostin.
Um, I guess my thought is it wouldn't. We would still need a decision on the motion for revision.
Okay. Well, I was just looking at that this morning. So if you have more thoughts on that, we can certainly bring that up later, but we don't need to resolve that now. So with that said, Ms. Winkles, if you'd like to call your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor, if I can call Cameron Cannon to the stand.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Winkles?
Yes. Mr. Cannon, how long have you known Jaden Ludwig?
Roughly 12, 13 years.
Okay. In the course of getting to know him, have you been present in the same location that he was present in while he was caring for his daughter?
Sometimes, not all the time.
Okay. And when was the last time you were, I guess, let me back up. What location were you generally at when you were there and Jaden Ludwig and his daughter were present?
In the living room.
Okay. And is that Kai Ludwig and Kelly Graves' house?
Correct.
Okay. And when was the last time you were there and happened to see Jaden and his daughter there at the same time?
It was when he dropped her off about a month ago.
Okay. And the time he dropped her off a month ago, did you, about how long was that interaction?
5 minutes.
And so going back further, was there ever a time you were at the Ludwig's house that you were able to witness the child being parented or being taken care of by anyone in that household where Jaden was also present?
Yes.
And about how long ago was that?
It was about the same time, the month ago, when he dropped her off.
Okay. Can you tell us what happened during that interaction when he dropped her off?
He grabbed her things, grabbed her Gatorade. I took the Gatorade. I took the Happy Meal. He talked to her for a little bit, said he loved her, said goodbye, and then Kai had walked her inside.
Okay. And what was the state of the child? Was she in a good, clean and looked happy?
Yeah, she was clean. She, shirt, pants, shoes.
Okay. And now, isn't it true that at some time in the past, Jaden was living in the Ludwig house? Is that right?
Correct.
And had you ever been there during the time that he was living there?
Yes.
Okay. And about during the time he was living there, and I believe that was back in the end of 2000 and to 2021. Is that right? Or am I getting these dates wrong?
I think so. I honestly don't remember.
Okay. And during the time that he was living there, about how often per week would you be there?
I was normally there on the weekends, sometimes both Saturday, Sunday, sometimes just one day. And again, it's because we're good friends.
Okay. And so you were normally there on the weekends. About how many hours would you be there, say, on any given Saturday?
6, 8, somewhere around there.
Okay. And when you were there for 6 to 8 hours on the weekends, when he was living there, did you ever personally witness his interactions with his daughter?
I remember one time he had got her snacks and got her a Capri Sun and got her the snacks, sat her down, and let her eat.
Okay. And why does that one time stick out in your head?
To be honest with you, I don't really have an answer. I guess it's because I was standing there.
Okay.
And
did you ever witness the child without Mr. Ludwig being present?
Yes.
And who was taking care of the child then?
It was either Kelly or Kai.
Okay. And when Kelly or Kai were taking care of the child and you were there, was Jaden also in the house?
I do not recall.
Okay. And on those weekends when he lived there, but Kelly and Kai were caring for the child, about how many hours would they be taking during that 6 to 8 hours? About how many hours would they be taking care of the child during the time that you were there?
I'd say a majority of the time.
Okay. And who was giving the child? Were you there over the lunch period or there over lunchtime on the weekends?
No, typically just dinner time.
Okay.
I'm up in the afternoon.
Okay. So over the dinner time period, did you also eat there with them?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were eating there with them, was the child there eating as well?
Yes, at the table.
Okay. And who, just the majority of the time that the child was there eating at the table that you personally saw, who was feeding the child?
Kelly.
Okay. And was Jaden Ludwig present at the table as well?
I do not recall.
Have you, in that time, were you there every single weekend, essentially, or close to every single weekend for the period that Jaden lived there? How often did you see Jaden personally do any parenting functions with the child?
He did a certain amount, but honestly, I think it was more Kai and Kelly doing the.
And of that certain amount, tell me what kinds of things was he doing? So the types of things Jaden personally was doing. He said of a certain amount. If you can quantify or qualify those activities, what kinds of things were they?
I mean, he, interacted with her, periodically checked on her. But again, it was mainly Kelly taking care of her.
Did you ever wonder why the grandparents were taking care of the child and it wasn't her father?
I did, but I didn't, again, ask or involve myself, I guess.
Okay. Have you ever witnessed any interactions between Jaden and either Kai or Kelly which caused you any concern?
There was the one time when it was around Kai's daughter's graduation when an incident happened, but I was on the back porch talking to Kai when the incident happened. So I was not out front, but I was there, I guess.
Did you see or witness anything with your own eyes?
I didn't see anything, no. I came out after it was over.
Okay. And is that the only time you that you saw any concerning behavior?
Yes.
Okay. And I've got no further questions, Your Honor.
Great. Cross-examination.
Yes, Mr. Cannon, you testified during previously in this matter during the emergency hearing. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And it's my understanding from the testimony when I was asking you questions that for the most part, you're kind of a drinking buddy of Kai. Is that correct?
No, that's on occasion, but it's not every day weekend event.
So you would come over. I thought you'd come over and he and Kai would have a few beers together.
Not all the time, no.
No, not all the time. Okay.
Barbecue.
All right. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Cannon, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and input. You're welcome to stay in the Zoom call. If you just keep your screen off and your microphone muted, that'd be perfect. And you're also free to go too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Holly Ludwig to the stand. Yes, Ms. Ludwig. Tell me, how do you know Jaden Ludwig?
I've known him my whole life. He's my brother.
Okay. And have you and Jaden ever resided in the same home?
Yes, on multiple occasions.
And when Jaden resided there with the child Jaylin, were you also living in the house?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have a job at the time?
No, I did not.
So would it be fair to say that anything that was going on in that house during that time period that Jaden lived there with Jaylin, you would have seen, heard, or had knowledge about?
Yes.
So kind of let's go back to that time period. So when your brother moved in with the child, can you tell me, was there any issues with that initially?
Issues with him moving in?
Yes.
No.
Okay. And were you able to witness the child being taken care of during the day?
Yeah.
Can you walk me through an average day for Jaylin back when Jaden and Jaylin both lived there?
Just a day-to-day, I guess. In the morning, we would get Jaylin up and get her breakfast, get her changed, and get her ready for the day. And throughout the day, we would just play with her and keep an eye on her.
Okay, and when you say we, who are you talking about?
That would be me, my mom, and my dad, or siblings like Ethan.
Okay, and I noticed you didn't say Jaden's name. Is there a reason for that?
Jaden would play with her on occasion. He would come out and play with her, but it wasn't very, like kind of standard for him to do so.
Okay. During the time that he lived there, when you also lived there, did he feed her?
Sometimes, I do recall that sometimes he did make her lunch, but that was like before she was going to daycare and before all of that happened too.
Okay. And was that the standard, him making her lunch, or is that just every now and then?
Every now and then. I mean, honestly, when he didn't do it, I would bring myself to do it.
Oh, okay. And who changed the diapers of the child back then?
It would either be mostly females in the house. It would be either my mom, me, or I think her name was Caitlin.
Was that Jaden's ex-girlfriend?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about so that's diapers. Who potty trained the child?
That would be my mom.
Okay. And do you remember the child ever going to the doctor while she lived there?
Yeah, I actually, honestly, I went to the doctor with them. So.
Okay. And when you say them, was the father present? Was Jaden present?
No.
Did you ever see Jaden take or go to the doctor with the child?
No.
Okay. What was Jaden doing during the time that your mom and you were caring for the child?
He would either be in the bedroom playing games or on his phone.
Okay. Was there ever a time where the child that you came to discover the child alone in any part of the house?
I can't recall any of that because usually I would follow her around the house, or when I was busy, I assumed that she was with somebody else.
Okay. And do you remember what time did the child usually wake up around that time?
Do you mean like when we woke her up or if we didn't wake her up?
Oh, okay. Well, let's go for the first one. What time would you generally wake her up?
Usually we would go kind of early in the morning, maybe like 7 or 8 in the morning.
Okay. And where was her father when you were waking her up?
In bed.
Okay. And when she woke up on her own, how would that take place? Would she leave the room? How would you know she had woken up on her own?
So we would have either like the bedroom door open because Jaden and her had shared a room. I would hear her trying to she wasn't saying anything obviously, but she would like make noises to get our attention. And when I went back there, Jaden was still asleep and I had taken her out of the crib and gotten her up for the day.
Okay. And after the child would wake up and either her on her own accord or through you guys, do you remember what time Jaden used to wake up?
Jaden, I would want to say maybe in the afternoon, the latest.
Okay. And so he was asleep, but his child was awake. Is that about accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember Jaden having a job when he was living there?
Yeah, I would occasionally bring him to work.
And did you ever witness Jaden smoking marijuana back when he lived there?
On sometimes in our backyard, yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have any cause for concern of Jaden's ability to care for Daylin when he was living with you guys?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell me why?
I think it was mostly he didn't really have any interest in her, and we were sorry, that's my dog. He didn't really have an interest in her. He just like kind of not really ignored her. I don't want to say he ignored her, but he kind of would just like push off the responsibilities, and that was kind of concerning for me. So I kind of kept note of that.
Okay. And then there was a time when Kelly asked him to leave. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And were you there that day?
I don't think I was.
Okay. And were you there for the day with the altercation where the police came?
My graduation, no, I was not there.
Okay. And so let's go to kind of a little later. Were you aware that there was a no contact order in place between Kelly and Jade?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of that no contact order, obviously he wasn't able to contact Kelly. During the time period of June 2021 to August of 2022, did you ever speak to your brother?
No.
Okay. And were you ever told by any third party, anybody other than yourself, not to speak to him?
No.
Okay. Why didn't you speak to him?
I didn't speak to him because it was my graduation day and it kind of fumbled my day. So I was kind of upset that that had happened on my graduation day. So I kind of took it upon myself to kind of distance myself from him.
Okay. Now, was he aware that you distanced yourself? Did you give him any affirmative notice? Like, I don't want to talk to you?
No.
Okay. And did he ever reach out to you during the same time period, June 2021 to August 2022?
He only contacted me once, but that was after I had moved out of my parents' house.
And when he contacted you, how did he contact you?
Through Facebook Messenger.
Okay. And what do you remember the gist or the content of that Facebook Messenger?
Yeah, he was congratulating me on a new job that I had just gotten.
Okay. Did he ask anything about his daughter?
No.
Okay. Did he ask to see his daughter?
No.
Okay. Did he ask anything about the no contact order?
No.
Okay. So there's been some allegations that Kelly and or Kai told you that you weren't allowed to speak to him. Is that true?
No, they never said that I couldn't contact him.
Okay. And if he had contacted you to see the child or to make inquiries about the child, would you have answered him?
If it were about Jalen, I would have.
Okay. And did you ever personally witness any member of your family inviting Jaden during the same time, June of 2021 to August 2022, inviting Jaden to go on any family trips with the child where Kelly would not be present?
No, I can't recall anything like that.
Okay. And do you remember any time where you all went to a pumpkin patch together?
Yes, I was there for that.
Okay. And what happened there?
What happened, we invited him and Michelle to join us for the pumpkin patch. And we didn't really have any contact with him throughout the day of going to the pumpkin patch. So we just went by ourselves, like Mom, me, Ethan, and Jalen and Tyler.
Okay. And so you had contacted him originally for him to go. Is that correct?
I did not contact him. No.
Somebody had.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was Mom.
Okay. But no, did he ever show up?
No.
Okay. And do you remember the month and year that occurred?
I'm sorry, you broke out.
Oh, do you remember the month and year that occurred?
I think it was last year, some point last year.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, is your brother Facebook friends with anyone in the family?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And do your parents often post, or does Kai and Kelly, do they often post pictures of Jalen on Facebook?
Most definitely.
Okay. And are you in contact with Teresa Ludwig?
Yes,
Okay, and that's the grandmother that you share with Jaden, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Have you ever, during the time period June 2021 to August 2022, were you still in contact with Teresa Ludwig?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever speak about Jalen?
I would send pictures when she asked or ask for updates. So yes.
Okay. And did she ever, and she'll be here to testify, but did she ever ask about Jaden visiting Jalen?
No.
Okay. And I guess just one more question that I forgot. When Jalen moved in, did you notice anything different about her from other children?
She wasn't really speaking. She was barely only kind of grunting and pointing at what she wanted. That was a little concerning for me. Because normally they're at that age when she came to
Object
us.
to the opinion about normally on children without some kind of qualifications.
The objection is noted. It's overruled. Go ahead.
And you can answer.
Oh, so sorry. But she just wasn't speaking and communicating like a normal child would.
Okay, and you're not a teacher or any sort of behavioral therapist or pediatrician or anything like that, are you?
No.
Okay, so you yourself noticed something was wrong, correct?
That's correct.
And how old were you at the time they moved in?
I think I was about 18, 19 years old.
Okay, so as an 18 or 19-year-old with no real childcare specialization or any sort of medical training, you noticed that something was wrong. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Anagnostou, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Ludwig, your father was married to your mother and got a divorce, and he had
I'm going to
custody
object
of
as to
you and your
relevance,
brother.
Your Honor, and this was not covered in the initial examination.
Oh, I'll hear the full question and then you can reiterate the objection.
Right. Kai Ludwig got custody of you and your brother, my client, Jaden Ludwig. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm going to object to the line of questioning due to relevance, and also it was not directly examined.
I'll allow it. Overruled.
You and your father and brother moved into Teresa Ludwig's home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How old were you at that time?
I was really young, so I can't really remember.
Okay. But it was you and your brother and your father living in Teresa Ludwig's home in Toledo, Oregon.
That's correct.
Okay. At some point, did your father move out and just leave you and Jaden with Teresa Ludwig?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay. Growing up, did you have any opportunity to witness your father disciplining Jaden?
On occasion, yeah.
And isn't it true that he would use items, either a belt or a switch or something, and spank Jaden?
I don't recall witnessing any of that.
You don't recall any physical contact by your father on Jaden?
No.
Okay. All right. You mentioned this pumpkin patch thing. Are you aware that nobody contacted Jaden? It wasn't you that contacted him. You think somebody else did?
Yeah. It was in person when he was invited.
It was in person. Were you present?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if he says no one contacted him, that would just be a mistake. Do your parents drink alcohol?
On occasion.
Okay.
My mom doesn't.
But your father does.
That's correct. On occasion.
And you're not living in the home anymore, is that correct?
That's correct. I live in my own apartment.
All right. And They have several dogs. Your parents have dogs.
That's correct.
And have you seen scratches on Jalen caused by the dogs?
No, I'm not there to witness anything like that.
Okay. Do you know the period of time that Jaden was there with Jalen?
I am rough on timelines. I know he was there for quite a while, but I don't know the timeline.
If I told you it was only a few months from approximately March until June, would that be accurate?
With Jaden living in the house with Jalen,
Correct.
I would say maybe that timeline would be okay. Maybe a couple more months after that.
You think it was more than that?
I believe so. Again, I'm not really good on timeline.
Do you think it would be okay if Jalen lived at your grandmother's house in Toledo?
I am not sure. Based on previous events, I would say no.
Based on what previous events? What are you talking about?
Just the way he was I don't want to say kicked out, but asked to leave the home because of him caring for Jalen or him not caring for Jalen.
Are you talking about asked to leave Kai's home?
No, asked to leave my grandparents' home.
There's nothing with regards to the home otherwise that concerns you about Jalen living there.
Yeah, other than that, I don't think so.
But you live there though.
I don't currently live at my grandparents' house.
Right, but you did when you were younger.
That's correct.
And it's the same house that she still lives in.
That's correct.
Nothing further.
Okay, redirect examination.
Just briefly. When you lived there when you were younger, do you have any memories of that time?
I have a few.
Okay. Are they good memories, not so good memories, bad memories?
I'd say they're pretty good. I mean, it wasn't too horrible, but
Do you remember how many bedrooms your grandmother's house has?
I think it's 2.
Would you call it a small or a medium-sized house?
I would say probably kind of small.
Okay. And are the bedrooms small as well?
1 bedroom is small, yes.
Okay. And is that the bedroom that your grandmother lives in or the one that somebody else would live in?
I think they call it like the guest bedroom or something.
And would it fit a king size bed?
I don't think so.
Okay. Would it fit a queen size bed?
I think the most it could fit would be like maybe like a twin or a kind of full.
Okay. And are there when's the last time you were there?
Just recently. I went there for a fair in Oregon.
Okay. And so you have a good relationship with your grandmother, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So I'm not going to ask you any other questions. We'll leave it at that, Your Honor.
Okay, recross examination.
None, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, Ms. Ludwig, thank you very much for your time and input. You're welcome to leave the meeting. You're welcome also to stay. You can just need to turn off your camera and mute. So you can make your choice if you want to stay or you can go.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Kai Ludwig to the stand.
Thank you. Ms. Nichols?
Okay, Kai. Now you are the paternal grandfather of Jalen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And let's start with how you found out that Jalen existed. Can you walk us through how you found out you had a grandfather?
I found that out from my mom.
Okay. And when you found out you had a granddaughter, where was the grandchild living at that time?
The grandchild was at that time living with her biological mom.
Okay. And at some point, was the child taken from her mom?
Yes.
And do you remember how that came about?
Well, I'm going to object. There's no foundation that he knows.
Okay, it was just for background, so that's fine. When Jaden was living with Melody Boone and his girlfriend, did you ever go visit that residence?
No.
Okay. And at some point, Jaden moved into your house, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he moved in with his girlfriend and the child, correct?
Yes.
Tell me about how that came about. how he essentially ended up in your house?
They both kind of pretty much exhausted all other locations to live. They got kicked out of Melanie's house, and they drove from Spokane, and we decided to put them up in our house.
Okay. And how did you become aware of that? Did somebody call you, write you a letter? How did you become aware that they needed someplace to live?
My mom, she called and we talked about it, and I opened my doors for them to come stay.
Okay. And when your mom called and talked about it with you, and she'll be testifying here today, did she inform you of her reasons why she had kicked him out of the house?
Yeah, a little bit. We talked about that prior to that conversation of them coming living with us. I always kept tabs on Jaden, and me and my mom would talk about what's going on and whatnot. And they basically wanted them to leave their house because of the miscare with Jalen and the dirty diapers left everywhere. And Jaden wouldn't pick up after the diapers and take care of Jalen.
Okay. And were you concerned that that would still be an issue in your house?
I was a little bit concerned on that, but we have a tight group of people that live in our house, and we could handle that and take care of that and help in any way we could. When Jaden first came over to our house, he was driving a car without it wasn't in his name, no tags, and he didn't have a driver's license. So when we talked before him coming over, we made arrangements, and while he was here, to get his driver's license, get the car tagged, insurance. He didn't have insurance at all, and I wasn't going to charge him any kind of rent, and get him back on track with his life.
Okay, so you say when he was in Spokane, he was driving a car that wasn't in his name, and he had no driver's license and no insurance and no tags. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Had he ever had a driver's license before that?
Yes.
Okay. So at that time, was it suspended or
Yeah,
what?
he had a couple tickets that were unpaid.
Okay. And was he driving to the best of your knowledge during that time period? Was he driving the child around when he had no driver's license, no insurance, no tax?
Yes.
Okay. And before he drove down from Spokane to our area, had you already taken care of all of those issues?
No.
Okay. So which ones hadn't you taken care of?
He still didn't have his driver's license, insurance, tags when he showed up at our house.
And who was driving the car when he showed up at your house?
Jaden.
Okay. So he shows up and he moves into the house. Tell me, initially, his girlfriend was there as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were at the house, when they both were at the house, who was caring for your granddaughter, Jalen?
Caitlin would, Kelly and I, Holly on occasion.
Okay. Did you ever see Jaden taking care of his own child?
He would get her some carrots out of the refrigerator every once in a while. And she loved vegetables, so she'd get some vegetables from him, but that's pretty much about it. He had never changed any diapers.
Okay. How about bathing her or putting her to bed?
No, that's mostly Kelly.
Okay.
And
doctor's visits, who would take her?
Kelly would take her.
Okay. Was there ever a time where you were home and witnessed the child not being supervised by anybody when Jaden was also in the house?
Yeah, there was a couple of instances, and it was more frequent than not. There was an incident where Jaden was on his phone in the living room for about 4 hours with her and didn't speak a word to her or didn't play with her at all, and just kind of let her roam around. It happened quite often.
It happened quite often that Jaden would ignore his child and do other things?
Yeah.
Okay. And when the child moved into the house, did you notice any difference in the child that you would say maybe wasn't a normal thing for a child?
I did notice that she didn't speak much, and at that age, the child should be speaking a little bit more than what she was. And I did notice when you try talking to her, she wouldn't look at you when you're speaking to her.
Okay.
And like you could make noises next to her, and she wouldn't have a clue that you're making a noise. So there was something wrong with her hearing.
Okay. And I already talked to Kelly about that, taking her to the doctor, so I won't reiterate that stuff. But Now, there came a time period that you asked Jaden to leave your house. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me what led up to that, and tell me your reasons why you wanted him gone.
Well, we tried to get Jaden to have a constant job, and there was a few times that he wasn't bringing any money, and he'd say he was going to work, and I'd drop him off to work, and his buddies would show up there where I'm dropping him off. And a couple times, I called the place where he was working. There was no Jaden to be found.
Object to the hearsay, Your Honor.
Overall, there's no hearsay presented. So you can keep on going.
And then there was a strict rule, not really a strict rule, I guess, but I didn't want to have marijuana on my property. And there was a night that I got up and Jaden was smoking through a bong in the backyard. That was one of it times. And then also the day that I found out that I had COVID, I dropped him off having COVID. I dropped him off at his work, and I called the company that he was working through to let him know that I got tested positive for COVID, and he wasn't there. So we went home, or I went home after being tested positive for COVID, and then we called his cell phone several times. We couldn't find him. Caitlin Boone called his cell phone several times. He wouldn't answer. We just couldn't find him for the whole day, and he wasn't working. And so that was kind of like the last straw.
Okay. And he wasn't working, and he wasn't with his daughter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how long had this time period been where you were dropping him off, or he was going to his quote unquote job and leaving his child in the care of another person, but not actually working?
Out of the few months he was here, I would say he worked at a place for 2 days, and then he would say he's going to work and then not go to work. And then he said he's looking for another job. So most of the time he'd just take off during the day and leave Jalen in care of someone else.
Okay. So while he was doing this, did you ever have cause for concern about his potential interest in the child, his interest in being a dad?
Yes, I had great concerns on that. He didn't put forth the effort that a dad should towards her throughout pretty much the whole entire time he lived with me.
Okay. And now you asked him to move out. Was that a smooth conversation?
Yeah, it actually wasn't bad. He was a little bit upset, but we all sat down and talked about it, and he kind of went along with it and said okay.
And were you there when he signed that document, essentially giving custody of the child for 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. Was anyone pressuring him to do it?
No.
Okay. Where was he? Did he have any plans after he left your house?
We talked about him going down to my mom and dad's again. I actually talked to my mom about it, and she was okay with that. And that was pretty much his plan at that time that we knew of.
Okay. Now, at some point, a no contact order was placed between him and Kelly, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And were you there on that date where the police were called?
No, I was actually in a hospital with COVID.
Okay. And now that no contact order, you didn't have a no contact. You weren't a protected person under that no contact order, correct?
No, I was not.
Okay. And your other children weren't under that order, correct?
No. Yeah, they were not. Correct.
Did you, between the time period of June 2021 to August 2022, were you in any contact with Jaden?
Yes. I was in contact once. And then another time I had a funeral in March to go to, and I was heading back through, and I met up with him in Salem to talk about the tubes that Jalen was going to be receiving in her ears.
Okay, so you were in contact with him at that time, and let's just talk about the ear conversation first. Tell me what was the exchange?
It wasn't much. We talked briefly. I mean, like maybe 2 minutes about the tubes, and then it went to him showing me his new car stereo that he got in the car he was driving at the time.
Did he ask any questions about the medical issues of Jalen?
No,
Okay. Did he ask which hospital or anything like that?
no,
Did he make any inquiries about his daughter other than you informing him of the tubes?
no.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to Exhibit 21, which is bait stamped, starts on 227, but the text messages start on 228. Okay. Do you recognize these?
Yes.
And what are they?
They're text messages.
And who are the texts between?
I believe these were in between me and my mom, I believe.
Okay. Well, whose number is 360?
Oh, that was Jaden's at the time. He's got a new number, I think.
Okay. So is it fair to say that these might have been between you and Jaden?
Yes.
Okay. And so they look like they start in June of 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he states on June 3rd, he's on the train. Was that after he had been kicked out of the house?
Yes.
Okay. And then it goes to sending essentially pictures. And if you can just look through this real quick. Do you remember most of these conversations?
Yes.
Okay. Now I noticed one on, let's see. One on bait stamp 232. I won't be able to make it there today. Work has been slow. I had to pay my insurance bill on my car. Tell her I'm sorry and give her a big hug for me. Do you remember those texts?
Yes.
And were those from Jaden?
Yes.
Okay. And was he canceling a visit?
Yeah, I think we arranged for him to come up that time. Yes.
Okay. And was that before any actual custody order was in place?
That I can't recall.
Okay.
Actually, I think it was.
Okay. Have you ever tried to stop Jaden from seeing his child?
No.
Okay. When there was a no contact order between him and your partner Kelly, was it your intention that he would still come to see the child or even collect her?
Yeah, come see the child, not necessarily collect her. I made it very clear to my mother to pass the message because I'm not sure if it was in between Jaden not having. I think he got a different phone and had a different phone number. I didn't have the contact information for him, so I made it perfectly clear to my mother to make arrangements with me. We could make arrangements without Kelly being there, and it wouldn't be against the no contact order.
Okay, so let me just do a procedural thing. Your Honor, I'd like to admit Exhibit 21 into evidence. And so let's turn now to those. So you generally texted your mother, correct, when you were talking to her about these things?
Yeah, texting or sometimes phone calls.
Okay, I'm going to have you go to Exhibit 6 for me. Okay, do you recognize these?
Yes.
And who are these text messages between?
Between my mom and I.
Okay, and the person on the left side of the page, who's that?
That would be my mom.
Okay, and are you on the right side?
Yes.
Okay. So your mom, it appears on 10/24/2021 that your mom is asking about seeing Jalen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did your mom often ask to see the child?
Every once in a while.
Okay. When that page is a little bit later, your mom says, because you know they will call Child Protective Services on you. Uncle Jimmy says hi. And then you say, what are you talking about? What kind of bullshit are you talking about?
I'm sorry, excuse me, counsel, which page are you on?
Oh, I'm still on that first one, 68.
Oh, you're on 68. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just reading them. And then if you flip the page, it says, I'm sorry, it was not meant for you. Did she ever tell you what that was about?
Yeah, I called her actually shortly after that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, nothing. And she tried to skate
I'm going to
around.
object that out of court discussion with a third party or, a witness.
So the objection is noted. Mr. Ludwig can testify to what he was just telling what he mentioned to his mother. Go ahead.
I asked basically what that was about, and I called her, and she kind of skated around it, and she said that was meant for Jaden,
Objection.
and it made it look like
Objection. So hold on, Mr. Ludwig, I apologize. There's an objection made by Mr. Adagnostu, sustained as to hearsay.
And Your Honor, that's my only response is Teresa Ludwig is one of the witnesses here today for them, and also I was going to call her as a hostile witness. I'm not sure if that would change the objection. She is technically going to be in court and can be cross-examined.
Yeah, I don't think it changes the ruling. It's an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
Okay. So you spoke to her, and she didn't. Well, we won't talk about that. But you then wrote, "Why are you all about Jaden?" And telling her that she's holding his hand. What do you mean by that? She was all about Jaden, and not Jalen, I guess is what you're saying, and that she's holding his hand. What do you mean by that?
what I meant by that was she coddles him a lot and does a lot of stuff for him, and that's what I was going with on that.
Does she ever provide him money that you have knowledge about?
I do, yes.
Okay. And has he ever in his life, obviously I know he's had a job for the last 5 months. Prior to that, to the best of your knowledge, had he ever had a job for longer than a period of 3 months?
No.
And has he ever, to the best of your knowledge, had any sort of residence where he was on the lease or on the deed or on any sort of agreement giving him the right to possession?
No, he has not.
And as your son, you've known him his whole life. Has he ever had since he's turned 18, has he ever had a stable living arrangement that has lasted for longer than 1 year?
No.
Okay. And she states kind of on that page, I want Jaden to be successful with his daughter, don't you? And you state, I don't think a travel trailer is ideal for Jalen. I would like to continue with her services up here with her speech. What did you mean by travel trailer?
He was staying down at Reedsport at one point in time with his biological mom, and they were living in a tent in a campground. So my parents bought them.
Object to foundation. I'm not sure how he knows this stuff.
How do you know? How do you
Well,
do
I know it because I'd never been there, but I do know it because I talked to Jaden about it, and my mom also told me about the trailer that they bought for them to move on to the campground.
Okay. And you state on 10/24/2021, and let me just get that right. That's during the time where there was a no contact order in place, correct?
Yeah, I do believe so. Yes.
Okay. And it says you guys also got what's best for Jalen, not what's best for Jaden. He's made his bed. And then you state, I reach out with Jaden on this matter, but he has not reached back. I do not have Crystal's number. What did you reach out to him about?
Well, for like visits and stuff like that for Jalen.
Go into a little more detail. What do you mean about visits with Jalen?
If he was going to come up and visit her. And I was also going to like send photos and the progress that she has made.
Okay, so during the no contact order, you were trying to contact your son to get him to come visit the child. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And now there's been all this talk about calling the police and having him arrested. If you had invited him to come to be with the child, would Kelly have been there?
No.
Okay. And were you willing to go to a public place or another place with the child if it meant that Jaden could visit his child?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you want Jaden visiting his child during that time?
Because it was good for both of them. It was good, be good for Jalen, and it would be good for Jaden.
Okay. And you say good for Jalen. Have you ever tried to keep Jaden from being this child's father?
No.
If you could have anything in the world regarding his parenting and Jalen, what would be your end goal here from the minor guardianship and from everything that you've done and all the money you've spent? What is your end goal here?
Well, my end goal for me personally, for Jaden to, I hate to use this, but to buck up a little bit, full-time job, a house, stable income, a nice, decent area for Jalen to grow up in and make sure all his ducks are in a row and kind of get his life together.
Okay. If you could, so what you're saying is, let me just get this right, that if Jalen had a stable living, a stable residence where he wasn't going to get kicked out, not relying on the charity of others, had a stable job for a while, and knew how to parent his daughter, if he were everything a dad should be, is it true that you would be more than willing
I
to?
would object to run-on leading question.
It was going to run on sustained.
Not so great at asking these questions when I'm thinking of them. If all the things that you requested in your declaration to the court earlier, namely that he have a stable job, you asked for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you meant stable job, what did you mean by that?
This is a stable job that he could provide and not worry about next week or the week after, or, you know, be worried about, you know, oh my goodness, am I gonna get fired or whatnot, just to have that stable income.
Okay. And how long do you think he should have that before you would have it meet your term of stable?
Probably 6 months or maybe a year.
Okay. And you said a stable living environment. Does that mean, what does that mean?
It means, you know, have his own place with a lease and not surfing on everybody else's couch per se, and not relying on everybody else because something could happen to change that.
Okay. And in terms of his parenting functions, what do you want to see with that?
I like to see him get pointers and take the pointers from other people in a positive manner instead of a negative manner, and maybe some parenting classes that that would teach him the fundamentals of parenting, and also like a nutrition class to teach proper nutrition for young kids.
Okay. Now you've known Jaden his whole life. Have you ever witnessed any angry outbursts from him that were not typical for your other children?
Yes, Jaden has. Yes, I have.
Explain those and explain the difference in them between what you witnessed with your other children.
I think with Jaden, with his ADHD and his focus and whatnot, I think his angry outbursts are a little bit more than normal and than other people. And it doesn't take much to get him angry.
Has he ever screamed at you?
Yes.
Okay. Has he ever made threats to you?
Yes.
And tell me some of those threats that he's made to you.
He's threatened to call the cops before. He ran away at one point in time when he was a minor, and he came back to the house and screamed at me about stuff and about how he was found, and he raised his hand to me and wanted to fight me actually. And so I called the cops again, and then he got arrested for that. But yeah, he just gets angry quick.
Okay. And is that why you requested an evaluation for anger?
Yes.
Okay. Has
It's
he
one
ever?
reason.
Okay. One reason. Do you have other reasons?
Just the way that he composes himself, and the incident with Kelly on my daughter's graduation.
Okay. Have you ever heard him scream at anybody or be abusive in any way in front of his child?
I think there was one instance with Caitlin. They got into it pretty good, and I think Jalen was in the crib, and they got in a pretty heated argument in the bedroom with Jalen, and also I wasn't there to see what happened, but I know Caitlin came out crying and didn't want to be around Jaden, and I thought there was some kind of altercation that Jaden jumped on her. From what Caitlin said and what the noise was in the bedroom.
Sustained as to hearsay.
Okay. And it also says in your declaration that you wanted him to have a drug and alcohol evaluation. Why would you request that?
I requested that because if he would rather smoke marijuana than buy diapers for his child. And I think that he needs to focus on the child more than want to get high every day.
So if he had all of those things, if he went through all the treatment that you're requesting, if he got himself to a place of a good dad, somebody who's not using drugs, who's not quick to anger, has a stable house, all that stuff, would you be happy to hand Jalen over to him to allow him to parent at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Was it ever your intention to replace Jaden as father in this child's life?
No.
Okay. How many kids do you currently have living in your house?
3.
How many kids have you raised?
Let's see. 5.
Did you ever think to yourself, how old are you, sir?
46.
Did you ever think to yourself at 46 that you wanted that 6th child?
Not really.
Okay. Why are you taking on the care of Jalen?
Because she needs stability in her life, and she needs to be well taken care of and parented and just be proper.
And now your son's saying he's going to move in with his grandmother. Is that going to be somewhere stable in your opinion? And if not, why?
I don't think it'd be stable because Jaden could do anything to make my grandma mad, and he'd be homeless again.
Okay. And just kind of switching gears a little, if you can go to page 71 of that same exhibit 6. Okay. You said, and this is 10/24/2021 during the time of the no contact order, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it says, Jaden can come up and meet me somewhere anytime he wants when I'm not working or hunting. Why did you make that offer?
I made that offer so he could see Jalen.
Okay. And before.
I didn't want, our intentions were not to keep Jalen from the mall. Our intentions was for Jaden to get his life together. So I offered that through my mom. At that point in time, I did not have Jaden's contact information.
Okay. And were you, it appears some of these texts are where your mother is essentially requesting a check that's coming for Jaden. Do you remember that at all?
I do. There was supposedly a last check at one of the places he worked, but we never seen one.
Okay. But they requested the check, correct?
Yeah.
But never requested to meet you to see the child.
No.
And this is 10/1/2022 at 12:29. So this is the second text over. You say, what's bullshit is if he wanted, or if he would have took her a long time ago, haven't heard from him for a year, and then you're forcing him to do it. That's the bottom line. What did you mean by that?
I meant by that was Jaden has listened to my mom, and my mom talks him into doing all kinds of things. And that was part of his ADHD, is my son doesn't recognize red flags. So he's easily manipulative by other people. And what I meant by that was it's pretty much my mom wanting Jalen and wanting Jaden to have Jalen at that point in time.
Okay. If we can turn to exhibit 7, which is on page 78. Do you recognize these?
Yes.
And what are these?
These are more texts from my mom and I.
Okay. And these start in 2020. And on 10/2020, you say, have Jaden call me. Was there a reason you were asking your mom to have Jaden call you?
Yeah, I can't remember at that point if I didn't have his contact information, or I think on that instance, I tried reaching out to him and I'd never gotten a response back. So I went through my mom to try to get him to contact me.
3/5/2022. It appears that you FaceTimed. Did you FaceTime your mother?
I think I did.
Okay. And it says doctor just came in. And that's 3/12/2022. What is that doctor? What are you talking about there?
Can't recall that one.
Okay. Do you remember when Dalen had her tubes put in?
think it was around March.
Okay, so it would have been around that time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you also, it looks like you may have also made your mother aware that she was in the hospital, correct?
Yes, I made my mom knew about the whole tubes and whatnot. We discussed it.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, just from your overall contact with your mother, and not going into anything she said, but just your overall impression, is it your overall impression that she was in contact with your son, Jaden?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask to admit Exhibit 7 into evidence. I don't believe that one is.
Any objection?
Yeah, I would object in that it's a hearsay of a witness, not a party to the case. As it contains that. I don't mind Mr. Ludwig saying what he texted somebody, but.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we've had other text exchanges admitted, and this is kind of a similar, it's between the same two individuals. So I'm going to note the objection and overrule. So 7 is admitted.
Okay. And so how long, so we've kind of gone through these texts. So, you've heard your son's claim that for the 18 months he didn't visit his child or didn't have any contact with them, that he didn't do so because he thought he was going to get arrested. Do you believe that is a truthful statement?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe he thought he was going to get arrested?
I believe that he thought he was going to get arrested. I made it perfectly clear that he was not.
Okay. So you informed him that he would not be arrested. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So at some point he knew he wasn't going to get arrested.
Objection. That calls for speculation.
Sustained.
How, from these text messages by October of 2021, you had informed your son and your mother that you would welcome a visit where Kelly wasn't present, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did anybody take you up on that offer?
No.
Okay. And if we can go to Exhibit 15. And do you recognize these?
Yeah, these are texts between me and Jaden.
Okay. And it looks like the dates start in 2021 and go through 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
10. It says, Jaden says, I'm here with Grandma and Grandpa trying to reunite with my daughter. Can you tell me the circumstances around the time that this text was sent?
This text, I believe this text was sent when they came up to pick her up after the restraining order was canceled or not valid.
Okay. And had you received any notice of them coming up?
Nope.
Okay. And it appears from this that Grandma and Grandpa, so is it safe to assume your son wasn't alone then?
No, he was not alone.
Okay. Did you allow him to take the child?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything about him taking the child? Well, I guess I should ask first, how long had it been since he'd seen his child?
It's been well over a year.
Okay. And the child was now what age when he took her?
2 and 2.5.
Okay. Were you there for their original interaction?
Yes.
Did it appear to you that the child recognized him as her father?
She was really standoffish. I would say no.
Okay. Did Jaden ask any questions of you about things that a normal parent would know about their child, such as bedtimes, what they ate, what they drank? Did he ask you any of those questions?
No.
And did he end up, and you ended up eventually filing for this minor guardianship, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd asked to admit Exhibit 15 into evidence. So we've kind of gone through what led up to that and kind of your concerns with his parenting then. What changes, if any, have you seen in your son's ability to parent from that time period, at the initial start of this case, or when he was living in your house, June to October, really, June 21 to October 2022? What changes have you seen from then to now?
I haven't seen much. There has been little improvements. He's been providing snacks on visits. Before we were required to have all snacks and backpack and clothing for her. So there has been a little bit of improvement.
Have you been there during the transfer?
Yes.
Okay. How often out of all of his visits that he's had since October 2022, if you can give me a ballpark percentage of those visits where he's been alone picking up the child?
I'd say 3%.
Okay. So 3% of the time he was alone, the rest of the time, who was he with?
Either with my mom and dad, or Michelle and a granddaughter, and then sometimes Michelle and they have a dog together.
Okay. And did Jaden ever disclose to you where he was living?
He disclosed he's living in Silverton.
And is that with Michelle?
Yes.
Now, did he ever disclose that Tyler, who's a registered sex offender, was living in that same house?
No.
Okay. Has he ever disclosed that to you?
No.
Okay. Has he ever provided any financial assistance in the little over 2 years you've had the child? Has he ever provided any money or any sort of clothing or any sort of benefits to you to help you and assist you in raising the child?
The only thing that in the beginning, it was just a little bit of food stamps when you're living with us, and then she'd come home with a new stuffed animal or a stuffed Mickey Mouse or maybe 1 or 2 t-shirts. They're new from him.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, he's had a job for 5 months, correct?
Correct.
In those 5 months, has he ever provided you with any money?
No.
Has he ever offered to provide you with money?
No.
Has the child ever come home with cash in her pocket?
No.
I'm going to object to the leading nature of these questions.
Sustained as to the last one. You can rephrase.
I can strike that question. What are your concerns currently? So they're not just asking for termination. They're also asking for overnight visitation as an alternate. So tell me in your own words, what are your personal concerns that from things that you've seen why you feel one way or the other about overnight visitation?
Oh, one of my concerns is Jaden's quick to have an attitude, and without the parenting skills that he doesn't have, I think if Jalen fights him to go to bed, I think that'd be a bad outcome. Also, where the overnights are going to be and who he can involve with her and keep her safe.
So do you now you've stated in this court that he lied to you for a period of time, pretending to go to a job that didn't exist, correct?
Correct.
Has he lied to the best of your knowledge, has he made false statements to other people about issues of location?
Objection leading, Your Honor.
The objection is noted, overruled.
And you can answer.
Oh, yeah. At one point in time, he said he was going to be living down in Reedsport, and then he'll give a different address, and then he'll say he'd be staying at my mom's house, and we got like 3 different answers, all within like a month period of where he's going to be staying. So I can't keep track of that.
Okay, so if I can have you turn to Exhibit 42. So at the bottom of this, it looks like this is the objection to the minor guardianship that was filed in the court. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
Okay. And it says Jaden Ludwig at the bottom, and it says 754. Do you know that address?
Yes, that's where he lives. His biological mom.
And you stated earlier, it was your testimony that he was living in a tent, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in his statement, he says, I live with my mom where we have prepared Jalen with her own room. Would that have been possible with what he told you where he was living with his mother?
At that time, I believe so, because that's when my parents bought him a trailer.
Okay, so at that time, he was living in a trailer with his own mother. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Had you ever been to that trailer?
No.
Do you know if that trailer had any rooms?
Objection. He's already answered. He's never been there.
Objection is sustained.
Okay. In October of 2022, that is where that's when he came down, on those visits. Do you have any personal knowledge of where he was actually residing at that time?
No.
Okay. And then if I can go to, let's see. Sorry, bear with me. I lost my index here. Exhibit 13. These are the petitioner's first interrogatory answers. Do you remember receiving these?
Just a second.
And we asked Jaden where he's living, and he says he's living street in Toledo. Do you recognize that address?
I do. That's my mom and dad's address.
Okay, so he's stating that he lives there. He answered these questions on April 30th of 2023. Do you have any personal knowledge of where he was actually residing at that time?
Silverton.
Okay, and if you go to page 163 of that same document, that's just the one kind of 3 in from the very end before 14. He signs this from Silverton, Oregon. Do you see that at the bottom? Jaden Ludwig, Silverton, Oregon.
Yes.
Okay. Who lives in Silverton, Oregon?
That'd be Michelle.
Okay, and is that the one where the registered sex offender lives?
Yes.
Okay. And then if you go to, and these are obviously Jaden's pay stubs. There's an address on this earnings statement that says Silverton, Oregon. Do you recognize that address?
I believe that's the same address that Michelle was at.
Okay. And as I told you before, he signed those interrogatories in April of 2023. Can you go ahead and turn to page 277 of those for me? So this still says street on the same day he's saying he lives with your mother. Were you in contact with your mother in April of 2023?
Yes.
Okay. And in being in contact with her, was anything ever discussed about Jaden living in her house?
Yes.
Okay. Was he living there at that time?
No.
Okay. Where was he living in April 2023?
Silverton.
Okay. So the statements that he has continually made about living with your mother, claiming that that's his
I'm going to
residence.
object, Your Honor, to the mischaracterization of what my client has said. And it's not in the evidence. It's a mischaracterization, and they keep presenting it as a fact statement.
So why don't you ask the question again, and I'll rule on the objection. I apologize.
I'll move from that question instead, and I'll go to exhibit 26 and it's bait stamp 3. It's kind of original is bait stamped over it, but 303. I had asked, and we're looking at answer to request for admissions 1. I had asked, admit that you spend more than 5 overnights per week in a residence that essentially is not your grandmother's. And he says, denied. Was, to the best of your knowledge, and he signed these on June 22nd, was your son residing 5 nights a week at your mother's house?
No.
Okay. And where was he residing in June of 2023?
Silverton.
Okay. And if you go to page 305 of that same document, what's been date stamped, your son signs from Silverton, Oregon. That's the location of Michelle's house, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Has your son ever given you a definite answer about where he currently resides?
No.
Okay. Do you have any concerns if this guardianship were to end or overnights were to be given based on this lack of a definite answer on residence?
Yes, this lack of.
Again, I'm going to object that that's a mischaracterization of the facts and evidence.
The objection's overruled. You can answer.
Yes, I can't prove where he could take Jalen. He can take Jalen to Silverton, or he could try to take her down to my mom's, but I can't prove that where she would go.
Okay, and you would essentially have to take the word of Jaden, correct?
Correct.
Action.
I'll withdraw.
The objection's overruled.
And has Jaden, and we've already discussed this, but just to reiterate, Jaden has been untruthful about his location to you in the past, correct?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Let's take our morning recess. It's 11:01. Let's come back at 11:15. I'll leave the Zoom up. I'll turn off my camera and microphone. We'll be back at a quarter after. No questions for Mr. Ludwig.
I just have two real quick ones that I forgot to ask.
Please, let's make sure. Yeah, Mr. Anagnostis here. Great.
Yes, Mr. Ludwig, some testimony was brought up in other cases, or I mean, and with other witnesses, that you at some point had lived with your children with your mother. Can you kind of elaborate on that living situation, when it happened, how long, and so forth?
Yeah, when the children were young, I did live in, but my parents resided in the house next door. They own 109 Street. It splits right there. But they lived next door. So I did reside with my children in that home, but it was just me and my children
And
when they were younger.
how long did you live there?
I would say it was probably about a year or so.
Okay. And that house, is that habitable now? Can somebody?
No.
And I have no further questions.
All right. All right. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Ludwig, I want to first start with a couple of comments that you made just a few minutes ago, and that is regarding in order for somebody to have custody of their children, they need to have a stable job for 6 months. Is that what I'm hearing you're saying?
Maybe you took that out of context. For Jaden to prove that he is willing and getting his life together, yes, it'd be nice if he had a good job, stable job for 6 months or a year.
Okay, so this just is a requirement that you're imposing on Jaden. You're not saying that people that don't have jobs for 6 months shouldn't have custody of their children.
I didn't say that.
Okay. Just with regards to Jaden, he has to have a job for 6 months in order to have custody of his children.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'll allow it. Overruled.
All right.
You can answer if you'd like.
I just wanted Jaden to prove himself.
Okay.
And I'm talking about just Jaden, not anybody else, because other situations may come up.
Right. You're aware he's had a job now for 6 months?
I believe it was 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no slack. It's got to be 6 months for Jaden to get Jalen back. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
No, I think you're incorrect on that. I think that the way you're asking that, I just would like Jaden to get his life together.
Okay. Your attorney, in her direct examination, she was asking you about interrogatories, exhibit number 26. You're indicating that based on that answer, my client is living in Silverton, Oregon, with Michelle, his girlfriend.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I'm probably a second too late, but I'm going to object as to form of that question. I didn't actually hear a question. If Mr. Anagnostis can ask it again.
this cross-examination, he can.
The objection's overruled.
All right. Mr. Ludwig, isn't it true that on exhibit 26, page Bates stamp, it's got 303. My client's answer was they denied your allegation that he was going to be living in a certain home, but that it's actually the other home. My grandparents live at 1 Toledo, Oregon. I will be spending every night there once I have custody of Jalen. That his answer?
That's his answer.
Okay, all right. You were married to Jalen's, or not Jalen, to Jaden's mother, correct?
Yes, I was.
And who was that?
Crystal.
Crystal. And you and she got divorced.
Yes, that's also correct.
All right. And where was that divorce at?
Toledo, Oregon.
Okay. And during that marriage, you had 2 children. Is that correct?
Yes,
My client, Jaden, and then we heard your daughter testify today.
correct.
What's my client's birthday?
5, 7.
All right. And were you present when he was born?
Yes, I was.
All right. When you got a divorce from Crystal, you got custody of the 2 kids. Is that correct?
I'm going to object as to relevance. We're hearing a minor guardianship of an adult. I'm not sure what the divorce and things that happened 23 years ago have to do with the Karen case.
Mr. Agnostu,
It has to do with them living in the house in Toledo.
continue.
Thank you. So you got custody of both the children,
Correct.
and you moved into the house in Toledo where my client wants to move in with Jalen.
Yes, that's also correct.
All right. And how old were your children at the time you moved into that house?
I believe Jaden was 2 and Holly was, I think, 18 months or maybe a little bit less than a year.
Were you working at that time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So you had daycare providers for the children?
Yes.
Who was that?
It was my mom at that time.
Having your mom do the daycare, is that delegating all parenting functions for your children?
No.
Okay. You filed declarations in this case, and in them you have said that my client is going to be delegating all parenting functions to Teresa Ludwig if he moves in with her.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So for you to go to work and have her do daycare, that's not delegating it. But if my client does the same thing, that's delegation. Is that my understanding?
When I lived there at my mom's property, they lived next door. At that time, I was single and working, holding a full-time job. I didn't delegate her to do it. She asked, and I don't think that there is enough room in that house for 4 people to live. There was barely enough room for me, Jaden, and Holly when they were younger.
Was there a period of time that you moved out of the house and left the children there with Teresa Ludwig in Toledo?
The only time that I moved out of that house was when I moved up here, and they stayed with my mom for roughly about 2 weeks to finish school out before they moved up here with me.
Okay. When they were children, did you take Jaden and Holly in for medical and dental appointments, or did your mother do that?
We both shared that responsibility, actually. One medical incident, I couldn't get the day off, so my mom went and took them to that. Also, sometimes my mom would go with me on medical events. We're a pretty close family, so we'd either both go, or I would just go, or on a day that I couldn't get off, my mom would take her, Holly or Jaden.
And allowing your mother to do things like that, that's not a delegation of parental authority.
My mom was kind of forceful in her involvement with Jaden and Holly. As sometimes I felt that I didn't have a choice in the matter back then.
Did you meet Miss Crape while you were living in Toledo at that residence?
Yes.
Did she move in?
No.
Okay. You and she, though, moved to this area?
She was already up in this area.
Okay. All right. So at some point you moved to this area?
Correct.
Okay. And Do you know how old Jaden was when you moved to this area?
I believe he was around 11.
Okay. Was he in middle school at the time?
Yes.
And where were you and Miss Crape and the children living?
Claskenite, Oregon, when I first met her.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again as to relevance. I understand the Toledo house, but I'm not sure what this has to do with the current case at hand.
Allow a little leeway, you can renew the objection.
Right. So you moved into Claskenite, Oregon, but at some point you moved into this area in Washington, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because this is the point I want to get to. This is my question, is that isn't it true that Jaden, when he got up here, he started middle school, and then at some point he went to Mark Morris High School?
Correct.
Okay. And so at some point you were living in the Longview area for him to go to Mark Morris High School?
Correct.
Okay. But he did not finish Mark Morris High School. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. He left and moved back to Toledo to his grandmother's home prior to graduation from Mark Morris High School. Is that correct?
I would say that's correct, but also, yes, that's correct.
All right. And he graduated from high school in the Toledo area.
Correct.
Okay. And were you aware of an incident where Miss Crape took a Sharpie and wrote liar on his forehead and sent him to Mark Morris High School without letting him wash that off?
No, I am not.
Okay. You haven't heard him mention that to you?
Nope.
And isn't it true that you have used corporal punishment on Jaden?
No, I have not.
You have never spanked him with a switch or with a belt or any item?
I think I did once, and I felt horrible for it.
Okay. And there were conflicts such that he left, he had to leave your residence and go to Toledo, Oregon to finish high school.
He wanted to live with his mother. I'm not sure if that, I can't answer that that's why, if it was the conflicts.
Did he make you aware of his girlfriend Kimberly Sloan and that she'd become pregnant?
No.
So you were never aware of that until after the fact?
Yeah, that's when my mom told me.
Okay, and that's because you and Jaden really didn't have much of a relationship.
We talked every once in a while. I knew about Kimberly, but I didn't know about the pregnancy from him.
You agree that Jaden was a very young father?
Yes,
Okay.
I do agree.
And after he got custody of Jaden, he moved in with his mother in the Spokane area.
That was one of the places they moved in. There's been several.
Right. And, he gets to Spokane, and then ultimately he has a relationship with Caitlin Boone, and then moves in with her mother. And then from there, they came to your residence. Right?
Wrong. I think Caitlin Boone, I think they went to my mom's house and then back to Caitlin Boone's house, then to my house.
Okay. And that was in late February or March of 2021.
Yes.
Okay. And then in June, I think it was June 3rd, it's on the document. You had Jaden sign the power of attorney regarding Jalen.
Correct.
Okay. And isn't it true that you told him, look, you have to sign this, and I'll give you a ticket to Toledo, to your grandmother's house, or you're going to be out on the street. He had no car, no means, and that was kind of the things you were saying. You're going to be out on the street with no means, no car.
Your
no
Honor,
anything.
I'm going to object. The question contains so many multiple parts, and the form, it's hard to tell what specific part is actually being asked.
This is
Just the form.
okay. Isn't it true that you told him he had to sign the power of attorney or he'd be out on the street?
That is not true.
Okay, all right. Now, you did buy him a ticket to Toledo and gave him $10 or so.
Correct.
All right. And he came back a week later for the graduation with his traveling up here with his grandmother, your mother.
Wrong. There's like 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Well, that's when this incident happened. Okay. That caused the restraining order to be placed in effect, right?
Right.
Okay. You have indicated that you attempted to reach out to my client to have conversations with him regarding Jalen
Correct.
during that period of time.
Yes.
Are you aware the restraining order prevented him from contacting or having people contact Kelly Crape on his, through him? So in other words, he can't contact somebody and have them contact Miss Crape.
Correct.
Okay. So, and you heard the testimony that, had he attempted to contact Miss Crape, he would have been arrested when that was in effect.
Yes, if he contacted Kelly, but he could contact me, Holly, anybody else in the family.
But the restraining order says that he can't contact you to, have a go-between to Miss Crape. Are you aware of it?
I'm aware of that, sir.
Okay.
The fact is that I'm my own person and I can handle Jalen, and we could have met up somewhere else. It's not without notifying Kelly.
And you heard her testify that, neither she nor my client, well, strike that. She wasn't aware that it had lapsed and been lifted until October of 2022.
Correct.
All right. And up until then, she indicated he would have been arrested had he violated that order.
Correct.
You have filed several declarations with regards to this matter on the emergency guardianship orders. Do you agree? You filed them?
Correct.
Right. I'm looking at your declaration of May 15th, 2023. And on page 2 of it, you say, as the child will be asleep for the majority of overnight, there's no benefit for the father having overnights. That's your position. Is that correct?
I think it might be taken a little bit out of context. I think.
I'm reading it right out of your declaration.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So you don't see the benefit of a overnight?
At this time, no.
Now, you did a second declaration filed on July 6th of 2023. The concern I have with this declaration and what you presented to the court was that my client, the father, says the father has taken the child to the home of Michelle, his girlfriend, where a child sex offender lives. You made that bold-faced statement to the court that he had done that.
I didn't make that statement to the courts.
It's in your declaration. I just read it.
That was child hearsay, remember? Because I heard it from the child, and you argued that fact about child hearsay.
So you had no evidence that my client had taken the child to Michelle Harrington's home where her son lives.
Correct.
But you made that statement to the court to prejudice the court against my client.
Honor, I'm going to object, asked and answered, and my client already answered. He got it from the child. So I'm not sure where we're going with this, but I object to asked and answered.
Objections noted. It's overruled. It's formatted differently. So you can answer, Mr. Ludwig, if you remember the question.
No, can you repeat that?
The question is, you put that statement in court to influence them, basically prejudice the court to not let my client have overnights.
No.
In this declaration on page 2, you were talking about Michelle Harrington, and you stated, additionally, the girlfriend who we believed was a good, safe measure obviously has a blind spot for her son. I'm not sure if she believes him innocent or what, but the fact she went along with this plan to take the child to her home against the court order and knowing there was registered sex offender living there shows that she is not capable of caring for or protecting the child. You made that statement to the court.
Correct, because I got a threatened letter from Michelle saying that this goes against her son, that they would take me to court outside of these proceedings.
So are you aware of probationary rules that if a sex offender is around a child in violation of whatever rules they have, they can go back to prison?
I can't answer that because I do not associate with sex offenders or know the rules of sex offender because I am not one.
But you're willing to make under oath statements that a sex offender was around a child and just boldface say that happened without having any proof?
Like I said prior, heard that from the child.
Now, your client, your attorney has obtained all the Google tracking information on my client. She requested that and we turned it over. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Have you gone through it?
No.
Okay. At least to date, we haven't been presented with any Google tracking that indicates he has taken Jalen to Silverton, Oregon. Are you aware of that?
No.
You're not aware of that. Are you willing to retract this statement that says, that Jalen had been taken to the home of Michelle?
I'll have to think. Probably no.
So you're not willing to retract that.
No.
So having somebody go to prison wrongfully is worth it if you get custody of Jalen. Is that what I'm hearing?
Can you rephrase that or ask me that again?
What I'm
I don't
saying
understand.
is you've made a statement that Michelle's son potentially is in violation of his probation. I mean, I don't have any idea what it is, but you're making a statement that he's been around a child, which could send him back to prison. You're not willing to retract that, saying even though your attorney's got Google Maps and everything else on the client, that you were wrong. That you retract that statement because it could send an innocent person to back to jail.
I'm going to object as to form and as to badgering the witness.
Sustained as to compound question and form.
Okay. Given the evidence that your attorneys obtained, the Google tracking, and the other information provided to you, do you retract that statement that Jalen has been to Michelle Harrington's home in Silverton, Oregon?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Where do you work?
I work at a company called USG.
And what do you do for them?
Forklift operator.
And isn't it true that you work 12-hour shifts?
For the majority of it, yes.
And the 12-hour shifts are either all day or all night. I mean, it's a rotating shift, 12 hours of day shift and then 12 hours of night shift.
Correct.
All right. So on the day shifts, when do you go into work?
6:45.
All right. And you don't get home, I guess, for 12 hours until, how far away is the employment?
About 35 minutes.
And then, so you don't get home until late in the evening,
Well, it depends on what shift I'm on.
right? I'm talking about day shift.
Yeah,
Okay. And then, at least, and then on the intervening weeks, you work night shift. What time do you go in?
same time.
Same time?
They're 12-hour shifts. They're from 7 to 7.
7 to 7, got it. Okay, so you get home at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I assume you got to get some sleep.
Yes.
All right. So, and that was the shift that you had, well, my client was living there at your residence from about late February, March until June.
Correct.
So for a lot of the interaction between my client and Jay Lynn, you would have been absent.
Yeah, I'd say yes and no, because on those days during the week, I get a day off that rotates. And on the graveyard, we're only working 3 graveyards. So like Thursday and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd be home. And then like if I got a Monday day shift off, I'd be off for about a week. So I was actually home more.
You would agree that Silverton, Oregon is 90 miles closer to Longview than Toledo, Oregon.
I'm not quite sure on the mileage.
Okay. My client has going on 10 months now, been driving up to see Jay Lynn and getting day visits only. You agree with that?
No, I do not agree with that.
How do you disagree?
I disagree with it's not only him driving up. I would say 50% of the time it's my mother, his grandmother driving her rig up for the visits.
Repeatedly said that it's not your intent to keep Jay Lynn. You want him returned. You want her returned to his father, but you've been reluctant to allow overnight visits.
Correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that's because of having to drive to Toledo. Is that my understanding?
That's one of them.
Okay. What's the other one?
The other one is I can't prove where he's taking her, and he could take her to Silverton, where a registered sex offender lives. And also, I believe that he doesn't have the parenting skills to take care of Jay Lynn at this point in time.
All right. Well, let's talk about that. So you could confirm that Jay Lynn was in Toledo, Oregon at your grandmother's house, could you not?
I honestly don't know how I could confirm that, but
You could call your mother and while you had her on the phone, ask to speak with Jay Lynn.
well,
Your Honor, I'm going to object. There was no question there. That was counsel testifying.
No, I'm asking him. a
The objection
question.
is overruled. He can answer if he knows.
Yeah.
that is not a guarantee.
Okay. You've indicated that the other reason is regarding parenting. Is that my understanding?
Parenting and able to take care of her. Correct.
All right. And he's been, when he's able to make it and come up, he only gets day visits and he takes care of Jay Lynn.
When 99% of the time, he's always with someone
He's been
to
on,
help take care of
yeah,
Jay Lynn.
isn't it true? He's come up on by himself and taken care of Jay Lynn.
Yeah.
Correct.
I believe like once or twice.
In your declaration of July 6th, you repeatedly put in Michelle's age. Is that some kind of issue with you that he's dating somebody that's 54? I think you put it in here at least twice.
I don't recall putting it in there twice, and I don't recall having an issue with her age.
Okay. On page 5 of your declaration, you indicated you had not seen the child in over a year and a half. Jaden, his girlfriend, Michelle, who is in her 50s. And in the next paragraph down, you say he is currently living with his 54-year-old girlfriend. I mean, you put it in twice within 2 paragraphs in your declaration.
Your Honor, I'm going to object, asked and answered. He didn't remember.
Objections overruled. You can answer.
Do you have a concern with regards to her age or some kind of age bias that Jaden's dating somebody who's 54?
No, I do not have an age bias on that thing.
Oh, okay. In fact, there's been several indications that you prefer, based on to some extent, that she was there with Jaden. You felt like Jalen. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think I think I'm glad that Jaden has someone in his life. The age doesn't matter on that. The only time is her age is brought up is when you bring it up.
When I bring it up?
Yeah, and like I said, I don't have a problem with Michelle. And that shows that I don't have a bias on her age.
Oh, okay. But I didn't. I'm reading your declaration. This is in your declaration. You're aware of that.
Correct.
Okay. All right. In your testimony today and in this declaration, you indicated that he has to have stable housing, in particular in your declaration, proof of a 2-bedroom home where he's on a lease rental agreement. And it goes on without any adult roommates.
Correct.
It's your requirement for him to get Jalen back, that he has to have a lease agreement.
Correct.
You're aware that there's a lot of families have custody of their kids with no lease agreement.
I know, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. All right. Have you heard of the community house?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to relevance.
Objections overruled. You can answer.
No, I'm not aware of community house.
Okay. All right. You said proof that childcare is set up. Are you aware that Jaden has found childcare in Toledo?
The only way I'm aware of it is through these proceedings.
Okay. He can't enroll her unless he has custody of her. You're aware of that?
Well, I'm also aware of that school. You can't just enroll someone. Jaden actually was in that school when he was younger, and that has to be referred by another school or a regular school. And it's not just something you can just go and sign up your children to.
Right. And my understanding, he's talking about Head Start, but there's actually several other daycares that he has looked into.
All right. Well, the only one that's been mentioned has been Head Start.
Okay. And you're saying that he has to be referred to be able to enroll Jalen in the Head Start.
Correct.
Okay. So he has indicated that when he gets custody of Jalen, he would be temporarily in Toledo, and he would be commuting. To Silverton. You've heard that plan on his behalf.
Yes.
Okay. And he would be home by about 5 o'clock every afternoon.
That's if traffic is willing.
Sure. That plan's a pretty common plan in the United States, isn't it, for dads to get home around 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
No.
No, you don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay. And that'd be, okay, never mind.
Mr. Maddox, let me just touch base with you. It's about 12:10, and I just kind of want to get a gauge of how much longer you think you'd have with Mr. Ludwig, or if we should talk about lunch or what have you. So I just want to touch base.
I keep thinking I'm almost done, and then so we should probably take a break.
Okay. All right. So it's 12:10. I think an hour to suit everybody. Okay.
Work for me.
Great. And then when we come back, Mr. Ludwig will finish up his testimony. And then Ms. Winkles, do you have additional witnesses that you'll be calling?
I don't, Your Honor.
Okay. And then Mr. Anagnostou, you'll have your witnesses lined up, ready to go?
Yes.